I really think that the country's in bad shape. I really believe that we're going to experience a monetary collapse, given the fact that we're borrowing and spending money to the tune of 43 cents out of every dollar. It's crazy.
So are you for ending the Fed?
Ending the Federal Reserve isn't the end to all of our problems. I would abolish the Federal Reserve if given the opportunity. But what we need to do is stop printing money. And Treasury could still print money given a Federal Reserve. So what we really need to do is slash spending. I am promising to submit a balanced budget to Congress in the year 2013, which would be a $1.4 trillion reduction in federal spending now.
It sounds like you read the Constitution different than I do, because to me it says Congress has the power to coin money, not print money.
All right. No,
right?
No argument. No argument.
So the Treasury couldn't print money without the Fed, or it could?
It could, yes, it could.
Based on what?
Well, the fact that they printed money before there was a central bank, just like other countries without a central bank print money. The Treasury prints money, not the Federal Reserve.
Well, what do you think about Ron Paul's HR 1098? Are you familiar with the Free Competition and Currency Act?
Yeah, I think that would be a good idea. That's how you could bring about commodity-based currency.
Do you see more states possibly doing what Utah passed, which is using gold and silver in any place imaginable in the state of Utah?
Well, back to competing currencies. I mean, that's the enabler to get us back to a commodity-based currency. And I would hope that well, not just hope, but the reality of doing that would be dozens of competing currencies.
All right, one of my big questions here, and the person I'm looking to vote for here out of the Libertarian Party is someone that's willing to just stop spending on Afghanistan and whateveristan on all these wars. I really don't think that we need to be in Syria and gearing up for Iran. What's your stance on the war?
I would completely agree. I'm promising to submit a balanced budget to Congress in the year 2013. That's a 43% reduction in military spending. A 43% reduction in military spending works out to us getting out of all of the military conflicts that we're currently engaged in. It's reducing our military footprint worldwide. It's reducing nuclear warheads from 2,300 to 500. It's research and development, it's intelligence, it's the military in uniform, and it's the civilian support staff that goes along with the military in uniform.
So I guess one question I have here is I'm not against getting rid of nuclear warheads. I just want to make sure everybody's on the same page, because it seems like our leader in charge, Barry, is all set to get rid of what we have, and if anybody else does it, great, as long as we did.
Well, I think, I mean, the way I look at this is, do we really need to blow up the planet 10 times, or might 4 times do it? Might 5 times do it?
You're also pushing something called the fair tax, correct?
Well, what would be a big improvement would be a consumption tax over our current tax system. So what I'm advocating is abolishing the IRS, abolishing income tax, abolishing corporate tax, abolishing withholdings from your payroll check. The proceeds for Medicare, Social Security, unemployment would come out of the proceeds of the fair tax.
Well, doesn't the fair tax, if I understand it right, it has some kind of a prebate system based on your income? So
Yes.
it keeps all the income reporting requirements that the IRS currently has?
No, actually, there is a formula to determine Social Security, but no, there's not a prebate. Everybody receives the same prebate check. Now, I might add that the fair tax is if you will, an iteration of the consumption tax. So I'm supporting the consumption tax, but specifically the fair tax. And I'm doing that because I think there are several million followers to the fair tax that can really take the debate and the discussion over this consumption tax down the road.
Well, why not? I favor getting rid of all direct taxes from the federal government, period, on the American people, and going back to the states collecting taxes. Why not push for that kind of a reform? I mean, either reform is going to be a big reform.
Well, let me also get back to my promise to submit a balanced budget to Congress in the year 2013, which is a $1.4 trillion reduction in federal spending. It's a 43% reduction in federal spending. Nobody's talking about that, and you've got to start with reducing spending. You have to start with reducing spending, something that we've never done before.
Well, let me jump in here. Of course, if you're just joining us, we're with Libertarian presidential candidate Gary Johnson right now, and I know we have Dr. Paul that mentions a lot of budget cuts, but he, in a sense, is getting shunned by the mainstream media, and I would like to know what you can do, Gary, in order to make these conventions and debates where they basically will exclude Ron Paul. I would like to know how you can get on the budget on the rolls yourself, because I've been following you for a while. I like what you have to say, but I'm just afraid that the public might not get that opportunity. They think that they're still in a small box with an R and a D next to it. So how do we get them out of that?
Well, the pie in the sky scenario. First off, I wouldn't be doing this if I didn't think there was an opportunity to win, and that goes something like so. That's getting 15% in the polls, and as established by the Presidential Debate Commission as a result of Perot, that threshold is 15%. If that happens, I think that anything is possible. Right now, I'm polling in the 8% range against Obama and Romney. I think that has a potential of bumping up when people recognize that there are only going to be 3 candidates on the ballot in all 50 states, the Libertarian Party being one of those, Libertarian candidate being one of those candidates, and the fact that 80% of Americans right now are saying that they would consider voting for a third-party candidate.
So do you feel that a lot of your potential voters are just waiting for Ron Paul to not make it as a Republican?
Well, at the base of Ron Paul's support are people with hearts and brains, and so without directing them anywhere, I think that there is a viable alternative or another choice that's arguably not any sort of concession.
Well, I'm not just saying this because you're here, but I've said on air for a long time now that you're head and shoulders above everybody that's left, with the exception of Ron Paul. So you definitely have my support if Ron Paul doesn't make it.
Well, I appreciate that, and that is another one of these moments going forward. Is I don't think that Ron Paul is going to get the Republican nomination, and when that happens, what happens to his support? There is I'm talking now about the notion of getting to 15% in the polls and how that happens.
Well, I guess the Republicans are still asleep, thinking that the Ron Paul supporters are going to follow Mitt Romney like a sheep, and I don't see that happening.
No, I don't see that happening, and shouldn't. And of course, Dr. Paul has always been principled, and he asked me for my support in 2008. I readily gave that. When I dropped out of the Republican primary, I asked everyone that was going to vote for me to vote for him. So we'll see.
And Jim will ask you a final question. I know you got plenty of other people to talk to tonight. So
we just had the 1-year anniversary of the Osama bin Laden raid in Pakistan. But the chief financier of the attack was from Pakistan, Mahmoud Ahmed. And now that bin Laden is done, should we shift our focus towards getting those guys who were actually responsible for funding the terrorists, like Mahmoud Ahmed of Pakistan's ISI?
If in fact that is the case, yeah, that's what our concern ought to be. Our concern ought to be threats against the United States, and if these are the individuals that have funded terrorism against the United States, then yes, these are the people that we should be concerned with.
All right, like I said, Gary, I know you have a lot of people to meet here. It's a pleasure meeting you for the first time in person.
Yeah, thank you, guys.
And we'll be in touch, and I hope you make it.
Great, thank you.
All right, everybody, that was Gary Johnson.